Hello, my name is Rafael Saiz, and in this learning object we are going to see some of the most important verb tenses in English with a special focus on technical English together with the youth. The contents. We will have a look at these verb tenses: simple present, present continuous, present perfect, and future with will. The objective is to learn how to write or to form these verbs correctly, and also to know how to use them depending on the situation and the meaning of the context. Let's start with the simple present. Here we have the form. The form is the verb as such, the infinitive, but remember to add an S in the third person singular. The passive is with the verb to be plus the past participle. The use. We use it to talk about things that are general. They express facts, something that happens at any time, and something that are true in general. And also for habits and repeated actions and occurrences. And also for facts, laws, things that are generally true. So it is widely used in technical English for descriptions. The present continuous, on the other hand, is different. It contains the verb to be plus the ing form. In the passive, it is exactly the same with the verb to be, and we use normally adverbs that are associated to this tense, and they come between the first part and the second part. For example, is quickly learning. They are used with continuous verbs that imply physical actions that you can see someone doing, but they normally are not used with verbs that are called non-continuous verbs. Those describing actions that you cannot see somebody doing. For example, abstract verbs, possession verbs, emotion verbs, etc. The use of the present continuous. The present continuous normally is to express the idea that something is happening now at the very moment of speaking. And also to say that something is in the process of being done, doing a longer action which is in progress. Sometimes, we might not be doing this at this specific time. For example, you are studying to become an engineer, not specifically now. You may not be studying at the moment. In the first example, you are reading this slide. It's something you are doing at the moment of speaking. And also the present continuous can indicate something that will or will not happen in the near future. It can also be used for near future. For example, I'm going to the party tonight. Or also with words, it is associated with words such as always, constantly, or similar to express the idea that something irritating takes place. For example, she is always coming to class late. We will move on now to present perfect in the active and passive meanings. The form is with the verb to have, plus the past participle of the verb. In the passive, we have exactly the same plus the past participle. And we have to know that adverbs usually come between the first part and the second part. For example, have never seen, have always seen, etc. In general, it is used for unspecified period of time in the past. The simple past is different in this respect. And also to describe actions that started in the past and continue up to the present time, or have some consequences in the present. Here we have in graphical form how to use them, how to use this verb. For example, for actions happening at a specified time before now. The exact time or point in time in the past is not important. You cannot use the present perfect with time expressions such as yesterday, ago, 1 year ago, last week, when I was a child, when I lived in Japan, at that moment, that day, or one day, because these expressions specify the exact point in time in the past. So we can use the present perfect with expression indicating a period, unspecified period in the past. such as ever, never, once, many times, several times, before, so far, already, and yet. These particles are important to mark the difference between simple past or present perfect. The concept of unspecified time sometimes can be a bit confusing, so here we have 5 examples of topics that are associated to this concept of unspecified time in the past. For example, when we describe an experience, John has studied 4 languages. Change over time, the government has become more interested in arts. Accomplishments in the past, man has learned how to fly long distances. Uncompleted actions you are expecting, the rain hasn't stopped yet, or multiple actions at different times in the past. The army has attacked that city 5 times, several times. Another important use of present perfect is to describe actions that started in the past and continue up in the present. They continue up until now. And here we have make a differentiation between the use of for and since. We use for to refer to the period of time. For example, I have had a cold for 2 weeks, the period. And we use since to mention the exact time when this action started. Mary has loved chocolate since she was a little girl. Here we have a graph, a picture, kind of explaining this in a graphical way. There's a important difference between present perfect and the simple past. The present perfect is associated to a time period which has not finished, whereas the simple past is a period which has finished. For example, I have seen 3 movies this week. The week hasn't finished. Or I saw 3 movies last week. Last week has finished. Another difference is between the present perfect use for recent news. Martin has crashed his car again. This is new information. And the simple past for older information. Martin crashed his car last year. In this case, we don't see it as connected to the present. The present perfect also is associated, as we said, to time which is not specific, whereas the simple past is for specific time actions in the past, where the period is clear. I have seen that movie already. We don't know yet when exactly. But we use the simple past for specific time. I saw that movie on Thursday at 9 o'clock, for example. And the last difference is between the present perfect use with for and since, when the actions have not finished yet. I have lived in Victoria for 5 years. I still live in Victoria. But we use the simple past associated with for and since, with the actions and have already finished. For example, I lived in Victoria for 5 years. I don't live there anymore. We will move on now to the last verb tense we will see in this learning object, a PU feature with will. We normally use the particle will with the verb. And like all feature forms, a simple feature cannot be used in clauses beginning with some particles. And here we have a summary of these particles. When, while, before, after, by the time, as soon as, if, unless. And this is used to express a voluntary action. I'll get you some coffee, to express a promise, to express a prediction. For example, the year 2022 will be a very interesting year. As a conclusion, it is very important to know the difference between the different forms, verb forms in English, depending on the situation, and not to translate directly from your language, because this verb tenses function in a different way in English and in Spanish, for example. Thank you very much, and I hope this was useful for you. Thanks.